Welcome, everybody, to this is the week 8 of R 2.1. And we are going to do two things. First half of the evening, we're going to finish the slides of Rome. Let me get a gallery view so I can see some of you anyway. I think that, yeah, there we go. Okay, which we didn't quite finish up with last week, as well as some of my own slides of my travels to Rome. And then we'll have an earlier than usual break, 20-minute break like we always do. And then after that, we will focus on the midterm, how it's going to be given, how to study for it, how it's going to be graded. And the fact that it's an open book test is a given. So I think you guys should have a whole lot less stress than my normal in-person students used to have when, they were preparing for a midterm. But I am going to give it in real time next week, and I'll talk more about it rather than get into it now. I'll just summarize briefly this one main kind of overview fact about it. It will be given in real time, just, on Zoom, but then it'll be kept posted for 48, or I will the next day. I mean, I can't do it that night because by 10 o'clock after I've been teaching for 3 hours and of course working on other things all day, it's a little too late to post. Plus it takes a couple hours to convert, so by the end of afternoon, I've already sent an email, but I will send yet one more to remind you all my students, that by 5 p.m. on the day after I gave the exam, it will be posted if you want to go back and look at it again to see if you want to make any adjustments, or if someone can't be there for some last minute emergency at the actual time the class is held on the night of, next for this class, it'll be next Tuesday. You'll have 48 hours to look at it and then submit. So it's on time. There will be a deadline, and I will then take down from, delete from the YouTube files of all my lectures, that one video, the one of the test as I gave it in real time. But that gives you guys, in essence, almost 72 hours, because you have during the evening of the test itself, as well as 2 days after that to complete it and turn it in to me. And how to turn it in, all of that we're going to talk about after the break. But I did want to commend people, hopefully that person's in now. In a general way, I wanted to say I was very impressed with the papers I've read so far. I think I've only read about 10, and my readers are working on some of the others, or most of the others. I can't guarantee, but I think I can get them back, those that were turned in by the actual regular deadline. And I give people an extension because of the fires, and I haven't taken points off. But after this point, yes, I would, because now it's been a week since they were due. So if any of you haven't gotten your first paper in, please do so before the midterm. In fact, if you could by the weekend, would be good, because then I'll have time to grade them, possibly get them back, the grades at least, back to you before the test. But if not, then next week sometime. My goal is certainly to have everyone who's turned in their papers before Monday get them all the grades back by next Friday, which would of course be after the midterm. Trying to avoid backlogging is what I call it. That's why I went ahead and had a lecture last week. If you missed it, you can go on YouTube and you'll see it under week 7, Roman art, where we covered over 3/4 of all the slides from the syllabus. If you still need to see that, you definitely should, because there'll be at least one, maybe 2 of those slides on the midterm. Okay, and after the break, when we go over the test, I'm going to actually hold up a printed out version of it, and I'll explain how you can convert that. My daughter, being as she is as tech savvy as any 17-year-old I've ever met, she has explained, as well as one of my 2 readers, the one I work with the longest, who is currently still a Santa Rosa JC student herself, and a teaching assistant to other professors. 2 ways, one of either of 2 ways that you can convert the file that I will be creating, which will have a 2-page printout of the test. I'll explain this after the break, so let's not get too far into that now. Exactly tonight I'll explain, and of course if you need to view that, you can, how the whole test is going to be got to you transmitted to you, A, as a document, and B, what to do with it and how to get it back to me so I can grade it or the readers can. Okay, we'll get to those things in a few minutes. Anybody have any questions on your papers, extra credit, or if you're still working on your papers before you turn them in? Does anybody have any other questions that I didn't already answer last week? Okay, because yeah, I know sometimes people still are unclear whether they can do something that's not from this syllabus or from the periods we are covering. If you haven't turned your paper in, I still have about 40% of them haven't been turned in. That's not surprising because of the disruptions we've had with smoke and fire. I hope there's no earthquake. No, I shouldn't say that. Just having my house, why it's on my mind is we had a minor one here in the East Bay. I don't think you've had one up there this semester. And the timing is kind of strange because we're having literally this week, starting at 8 a.m. in the morning, a crew doing a retrofit of our foundation because it's an old house and it would slide off the foundation in the first big earthquake. So we hope that work gets done in time and we don't need it. None of us will need it. Anyway, okay, one more time, any questions about anything we've covered up to this point in the general overview of the lectures? Pretty straightforward. You know the notes, of course, that you should have taken or can get from watching the lectures on YouTube. Or extra credit. I haven't seen too many people turn in extra credit yet. I imagine after the midterms that'll change, because that's when people start really thinking, oh, wait a minute, I'm X points shy where I want to be. Once you get both the first paper grade, that's half your total points in the midterm. Then you can project ahead how far, as far ahead as you need, how many points you need to get the grade you want. And I'm sure all of you want an A. But any questions on anything about grades, extra credit, or your first papers? All right, so let us now go to the slides of Rome that we hadn't finished from last week. Okay, whoops, that one. Let's get that. Okay, so I want to get this. Is it not? Don't do this. Okay, so got to get rid of this. It was fine just before I tested it, but of course it has to do something. Oh, great. Now we're having one of those nights. My internet connection's about to go out, so let's keep our fingers crossed. Okay, so I'm going to have to do this. It's not what I wanted to do, but I need to pull up the same file I had already pulled up. We had this happen once before, you remember. It just was slightly irritating. I'm sorry, but it won't be. We also have plenty of time for the review. Okay, let's hope this works. If it doesn't, we've got a problem. Now, wait a minute. What? Okay, come on. I'll try it again. Let's keep our fingers crossed because it says I'm screen sharing, so it should work now. Okay, can people see it?
Yeah.
It's a slide of the Roman Forum, which isn't on the syllabus, but it is the first one I want you to see of my own slides. The point is that among these slides tonight that I took are going to be my own slides of the remaining sites or slides from the syllabus. And those, when I get to them, of course, as always, I will say, this is a must know, now you need to take notes. I think we have like 3 or 4 left that we need to do. Okay, can people see this?
Okay.
Hello? Uh-oh.
Yes.
Now I'm concerned. Nobody's saying hello.
No, hello.
I can hear you.
Try it again. According to my screen, it's doing what it's supposed to. It's on screen share and the images are large.
Yeah, we can see it. Yeah, that's fine.
I know I didn't mute myself, so can anybody see these?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. I don't know what else to do but proceed because, well, we got one more joining us. Let me get that person. Let's see. Oh, that's a chat thing. I don't need to do that. Okay, well, I don't know if nobody is able
So
or
the new
willing
sheet
to
with the old
sound
sheet.
off and say, yes, you can see them. I have to assume you can because that's what my screen tells me. But I'll try one more time. First of all, can you hear me? And second, can you see the slide of the Roman Forum? It's
Can you hear
a bunch
us?
of
Both
ruined
see
Roman
and hear you.
temples and things.
I don't
Anybody?
think you can hear us.
I think you muted us.
Worrisome. Usually at least one person will say they can hear it. It's on screen share and the images are going like they're supposed to, advancing, which means it's not a frozen image. A, and B, my mute is not on, so I'm not sure why this would. Well, I'm going to go ahead and just assume that you can,
Everyone, he
in
doesn't.
the absence of
just-
anybody telling me otherwise. Well,
We can hear you.
I don't want to go back to the beginning and start all over. That goes another several minutes and possibly we could lose our connection.
Does he not know
But
how to do the
we
chat?
can
Maybe
hear.
no.
Oh, that's very nice of you. Thank you. I will thank that student in advance. I appreciate it. All right. This is the Roman Forum as it looks today. Well, it's an old slide, but it hadn't changed. This is where the first, of course, of the Roman emperors would have had their soldiers march down this road right here. And this road is the beginning of the Roman road system. You're going to see it up close and with a
Wow.
lot of interesting details as we go through. So the first few slides, you don't need to take notes, okay? I will tell you, like I said, about 10, 15 minutes into this, we'll get to the first must know and then there'll be a couple more. Okay, so there's the Coliseum. You see it in the distance. We're going to see it way up close. We're going to go inside the Coliseum even. But for now, let's just take an overview of the ruins. And of course, they're all ruins except for one building that's still functioning as a Catholic church now, but originally a Roman temple. It survived, and that's the actual original roof of it here, back there. And the portico, right? Remember the column porch. And this is all that's left of this temple, was dedicated to Augustus Caesar, actually. Well, he had it built, and later they dedicated to him. It was built to the god Mars, the Roman god of war. So let's go down into the forum and take a look at some of these sites, which mostly are, you know, what's left of one or two just sections of the temple, but there are some that are better preserved. On this hill are the homes of the wealthy and powerful, overlooking the forum, so they could just walk down with their servants or be carried. They were probably carried in a, you know, what do they call those things? I can never think what they're called, right? But they're servants, you know, or even on a horse, perhaps, down to meet with whoever they had to meet with in the forum on a work day. Now, I couldn't resist one of the Cats of Rome. There's a calendar, I think it's still being produced, called Il Gatti di Roma. As you may know, if you know any Italian, that means, oh, okay, that would be good. I didn't know that I had muted anybody, because that is a problem. When did I mute anybody? Okay, hang on. Let's see. I'm going to look under participants. Well, first of all, let me let the other two people in. Okay. And now I think I know what I have to do. Hang on. I hope this works. This here. Unmute. Organized. Hide video. Hide meeting. What? I didn't hit
Can you
mute
hear us
though. I
now?
don't get that. Okay. Well, if I do this, it's going. Wait a minute.
Maybe
Hang on.
Maybe speakers turned off.
I'm looking for. I don't see anything that says unmute. If I do this, it's going to mute me.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't help. I've never had this happen. Maybe it's because my interconnection keeps going back and forth between it. I'm about to lose it. That's frustrating. I want you guys to be able to, as you all know, that's my way of teaching. I like to encourage participation. Let me check one more thing here.
Oh, you can do it.
Chat. Well, chat doesn't work for me because then I have to stop and look at the chats right in the middle of a lecture every 2 or 3 slides. That just doesn't work. Okay, share computer sound. I thought I had. Maybe that's what that is. But now can anybody hear me?
Yeah, we
No,
can
not
hear
still.
you.
Oh, this is frustrating. Okay.
I don't think you can hear
Now
us.
this says mute all down here. I didn't hit that though. So I'm going to try something. Let's see. Mute all new. Okay, now I'm going to hit where it says no, I don't want to mute all.
Can you hear
Ask
us?
to unmute.
Oh.
Okay. But that's only for Ava, right? Or Ava.
Well, can you hear us? Can you hear me?
I've never had it do this. I don't understand why it's doing this. I didn't touch the mute function at all. I haven't this whole semester, except when I take a break, of course. So, hide video panel. Well, there isn't any other function I can see that would affect it, because on this one, it just says if I wanted to mute individuals, which I haven't done. So it's a malfunction. Okay. Yeah, hang on just a second. I know my microphone was okay before, since you can hear me, obviously. When I first sign up, I always do that before I send you guys the meeting info. We hear you fine. Check your speaker connection. Thank you for that. Well, I'm not sure what to do about that. Because, hang on, there could be something down here. Just a second. Let's see, what is this?
I think we'll
Zoom
be fine.
meeting participant is using your microphone. I'm hitting the microphone icon on the far left panel. I don't know what that means. I've never used that, but let me see if that has any bearing. Microphone, allow access to the microphone on this device. Well, I already did. That's how you can hear me. Otherwise, you couldn't.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it could be, but I have no idea. If first of all, I didn't do anything different than we have every week for the last 8 weeks, as you know, or 7 weeks. That was never an issue. So I think I'm going to have to just go ahead and give the notes to you when they come up, since you can hear me, which it would be much worse if you couldn't. However, it's frustrating for all of you, I know. So I don't think there'll be any reason to ask questions about the slides that aren't on the syllabus. But why don't we do it this way, since we've already been messing with this for a while. At the break, I will take it, unplug it from the wall. It's charged up. Take it out and see if my, tech-savvy wife or daughter can figure out if the idea one of you had just suggested is something might have happened with the microphone level or volume. I'm not sure why. Don't see why. One person is waiting, so let me get that person in. Wait a minute. Yeah, and I see your chats now, but you hear what I'm saying. There's nothing I can see that's, there are only two control panel options that relate to, okay, wait a minute. What is this? Select a microphone. But I already have it. It's the one through the computer I've been using every week, and it's worked fine. And I didn't do anything to it. I just did the same steps I've done every week. I think it's something about, the internet connection being weak, but I have no idea. I'm not tech savvy enough to be able to guess, and it's pointless to do that. So I'll have to do it at the break, okay? Microphone, high definition audio device. Well, that isn't going to probably do anything, but I'll try. Okay. So it's at least going to work for the minimal function. I have to tell you, a lot of my fellow professors tell me they just mute all their students until the break or until the end of the evening. I don't like doing that, but for now, that's probably unavoidable till we get to the break. And then I will see what I can do to mess around with. So you can ask questions during the review for the discussion, I should say, for the midterm. That's very important. I'll do everything I can before the end of the break. But for now, you can just, if you can hear me, as you say you can, you don't have to take notes until we get to the 3 or 4 slides, the latter few minutes here. We'll take an early break, and then hopefully we resolve the muting problem with you guys. Okay, these cats, what can I say? There are more cats in Rome than there are people, and there's a calendar every year, and the guy who created it is a multimillionaire. God knows by now he could be a billionaire, called Il Gatti di Roma, and every month had a different view like this. This is the beginning of the Roman road system. These paving stones are 2,700 years old. When the city of Rome was founded in the 700s, they first laid out their first few roads in the city itself, and these cats are taking advantage of those nearly 3,000-year-old stones. Okay, so this is the temple that we saw earlier to the god of war, the Roman god of war, Mars. Okay, and this was a temple. Oh, 2 people have been in the waiting room. Okay, sorry, I'll let them in. And I will go ahead and tell them that they're going to have to wait till after the break. If you just joined us, you'll need to wait till after the break for me to figure out why students are being muted when I didn't do that, and I don't see any option. But at the break, I may be able to figure that out. Before we, at the end of the break, we do a review or a discussion. I keep saying review. It's not a slide review. It's a discussion of how the test is given, how to study, and how it will be graded. And that's when I do want to answer your live questions. But we'll have to do that after we get through these slides at the end of the break. Okay. So let's talk about the Vestal Virgins. Some of you may know that those were the 15 women selected by the emperor or his staff to live their whole lives in luxury, but in essence in prison. Not literally, but they had to live on the grounds of this temple, the one you're looking at right now, which was a round temple. I think you can tell this is a section, that's all that's left standing. It's just one slight curved portion of the wall. And they were given all the food and luxury and fancy clothes, and they were allowed to go out fairly often on any religious holiday. On average, it was at least once a month, plus to go to the games. They were definitely given special seating, but they were supposed to spend their whole lives as, of course, virgins in this confinement in this temple and on the grounds. There was some, extensive gardens and things, but it wouldn't have been a very pleasant alternative, I don't think. And why did they have that tradition? Because they thought that they were the protectors. Only virgins, quote unquote, Roman religions believed that only groups of virgins who were blessed by whoever it was, whatever God, and the emperor, of course, would have the power to keep the eternal flame burning. Without the eternal flame, Rome would fall. And guess what? That actually happened. The only first time the flame, the keeper of the flame is in the middle of the temple. They have to make sure 24/7 that it doesn't go out. It wasn't just a little flickering. It was a big flame, probably several feet across. If it went out, Rome would fall. Well, the first time it ever went out was the first time Rome fell to Attila the Hun, who was attacking Italy from Asia. And then it fell again the day Rome literally lost its I think it has to do with the internet connection. I keep getting this flashing bar that says the internet connection is unstable, then it goes away. This is the first slide I want to go up close to, and it's not a must know. Okay, so you can still just relax about, you have to take notes. But this was Marcus Aurelius's temple built to his deceased wife. He was like a childhood sweetheart. He was the emperor who was the first one to temporarily stop persecuting the Christians and the Jews and the gypsies and so forth. He spoke like 8 languages. He was brilliant. He was actually a published author, a philosopher, and a professor, actually a teacher for years before he became the emperor, Marcus Aurelius. If you saw the movie Gladiator, a few of you, Richard Harris, who was also in, Harry Potter series, right, as Dumbledore. That guy played this emperor, the one we're talking about. And Joaquin Phoenix played his son. You may have seen that movie. If not, it's pretty good. It's pretty accurate. Except I don't think that Marcus Aurelius' son actually suffocated his own father with pillows. His father died of natural causes. Anyway, he was one of their much more, relatively reformed emperors. in that he believed in, not persecuting people just because of their religion or their ethnic background, which most Roman rulers did, of course. These columns have been standing for almost 2,000 years. The temple was built about 160 AD. His wife died shortly after he became emperor. He ruled for over 20 years, but he never remarried because he never stopped feeling her loss. And so the road right in front of it is, it might look like no big deal, but look how smooth that is from over 2,500 years heading towards the Coliseum. We'll get to see. Oh, there, that's actually a better view of it. Those are original paving stones placed there probably by slaves, but somehow Roman workers of one kind or another in front of the temple to Marcus Aurelius' wife. And then she is memorialized here. I love this. This is one of my favorite little details that I saw in the forum. That's her as a goddess, because after she died, the Roman Senate, out of honor to him and to assuage his grief, created a god out of her, goddess. I don't, you could make that a law, but they did all the time. So they made her a goddess, and supposedly she was a dancer when he met her. She was dancing up in, they called it the Elysian Fields, their version of heaven. That's a piece of stone from the temple that fell and has been preserved by the Roman government or the Italian government for people to look at. Okay, now we already covered this last week, so I'm not going to do the lecture part again, but this was on the syllabus, and if you didn't see that yet or watch the YouTube video of it, you should go back and do that, because this one is a pretty important slide. This is the Arch of Titus. It was built in 81 AD. I'm not going to repeat the notes from the lecture because I told you I was just going to give you notes from the ones we didn't cover last week. So you can go back and see them on YouTube. But this is a pretty major monument to a moment in history that we're still dealing with today, the fall of Jerusalem to the Roman army. And when you go inside, I think you can see, oh yeah, that's right. This is she forgot to copy that. We did this last week. Inside here are bas-relief life-size figures of Roman soldiers sacking the temple and stealing everything they could get their hands on, everything valuable, gold and jewelry, the precious metals, and the Ark of the Covenant disappeared that night during the fall of Jerusalem to the Roman army. And of course, that led to the beginning of the Palestinian Jewish, Arab, Israeli-Palestinian conflict that we still have, that we're still dealing with today. This arch is interesting to me because it's to an emperor who was proud of how cruel he was, and he was showing off that pride that he felt. It's called the Arch of Septimus Severus. It's one that you don't see much in history books or even hear about at all, but it's better preserved than most. This is well beyond the Golden Age, but Rome was still powerful. It's around 230, 240, 250 AD, so over almost 300 years after the empire was founded by Augustus, or 2.5 centuries anyway. And it was in decline, but very, very, very slowly. So it was still a powerful empire. They might have lost a few provinces by this time, but the main thing is they become so corrupt that most emperors didn't last more than 2 years on the throne before they were murdered by someone who wanted the throne to take it away. He survived over 20 years because he was so ruthless. He had a network of secret police, which they're illustrated here, and they just, anybody that in the least bit was suspected, I can't speak tonight, sorry, if they were suspected of any kind of intrigue against him, let alone actually plotting, they were definitely dead meat. He would have them tortured to death, usually, of course, to try and get information out of them, and then killed and their bodies thrown in the Tiber River. And he was bragging about it. So the word severe comes from him, to be severe. Septimus Severus, the emperor who was literally that way towards all of his, well, the whole empire. He oppressed people, even if they didn't, had some of them murdered just because he didn't like the way they looked at him. Okay, we're not going to talk about this because we're going to get to this later, but it's the Arch of Constantine, the best preserved of all Roman arches, and the last great Roman emperor, his name was Constantine. We're covering that the night of the midterm. Don't forget that the test is only an hour, so that we take a slightly earlier break next week too. And then don't go away, because there will be at least one of the slides after that from early Christian art, it's called, or Orthodox Christian art, which are quite interesting. And also at least one of them will be on the final. So we will have it's on the syllabus, all of that. All right, so we'll see this in more detail then. So I'll save these slides for that night. But now let's take a close-up look at the Coliseum. You can see the scaffolding here. I have a little anecdote to tell you, and this is the type of thing that when you go, nobody here has been to Rome, right? I think. Well, that's right. I can't get an answer out of you until after the break. I'm sorry. But if you haven't been and you do go, you probably will see several major monuments under restoration. What does that mean? Not really. It's mostly cleaning they're doing because of the pollution. I think you can see that. The dirt from air pollution, mostly autos, of course, auto exhaust, is this section where the scaffolding is. This part's been cleaned off. Well, when I was there, my first trip to Rome, and I was taking these slides, a tour bus from Teaneck, New Jersey. Now, I have friends from New Jersey, so if you're from New Jersey, my apologies to Bruce Springsteen fans or whoever, I don't know. The point is that this is the kind of thing that I've heard people actually say while I'm in the U.S. from a tour bus, getting off a tour bus, where everyone from that tour bus is from some part of New Jersey. So it's my little bit of CYA here, but it's true. It's a Teaneck, New Jersey senior tour, something of Rome, on the bus heading, right? So they're getting out, and a couple of them looked up at the tourists, looked up at the scaffolding, and one of them said to the other, "Oh, Margaret, why do you think there's all that scaffolding on that building and on the Coliseum?" And the other one says, "Well, I don't know, Ethel, unless I think I know. That's what's been holding it up all these years." No, it's been held up by the construction of the stonework for 2,000 years. Nothing to do with the scaffolding. Let's go up close and take a closer look at it. It's mind-boggling, and when I hope those of you who have an interest in it will actually get to see it and take your time. Don't just, if you go through some tour groups, you know, some are great, many of them are. But there are some where you get like 10 or 15 minutes to see the whole site and then get back on the bus. I would avoid those kind of tours. So let's get up close and see what you can see when you walk into it. It's 160 feet tall with 4 equal height, 40-story. We covered this last week in the must-know notes. Again, if you didn't see that, you want to, that's a high probability, the slide of the Coliseum, of being on the midterm. Okay, so the arches were, the whole facade, not just the arches, the entire exterior was covered in marble, and that marble was taken away by a pope many, well over 1,000 years later to build various churches, as was some of the actual outer walls too. I mentioned that last week. But now a few of you may notice what look like, and if you think they are, you're right. These are not part of what I'm talking about, but these here are bullet holes. How did they get there? World War II. When the Americans liberated Rome from the fascists and kicked Mussolini and, of course, the Germans who were helping him out of Rome, about 200 SS soldiers hid out in the Coliseum and used it to snipe on people as they drove or rode their bicycles by, you know, from above. Of course, it's a perfect spot. So they had to be cleaned out. So we had the U.S. military commander then, had a choice. He could either call in bombers, right, or even use artillery and destroy the building. What was left of it is pretty impressive. Or save the relic and send in a company of U.S. soldiers. That's 200 soldiers, roughly the same as the number of SS that were in the building, and clean them out one by one, hand-to-hand combat, and many of them died. So quite literally, those soldiers, the people of Rome, have, I don't know, somewhere in the city of Rome, I don't know where, a monument thanking them for sacrificing and risking their lives to save a piece of Roman history, Italian and, well, world history. So those are bullet holes. These are not. These are where the marble was attached by metal clamps that was ripped out by that Pope later on to build other churches. Okay, so here's the part where the wall on the outer side, you see how it ends here, was taken down by an emperor. Well, I can tell you it was Julius II, the guy that built the Sistine Chapel and St. Peter's. He took that row of stone and the marble outer cladding, all of it, off in a few years to build St. Peter's. That's how much stone, if you can figure, you know, the connection there. Just 1/3 of the outer walls was enough stone to build the largest church in the world, and it still is. St. Peter's is the largest church on earth. Okay, let's go under the arches and into the Coliseum. I don't know about the rest of you, but I believe in reincarnation. What you believe is your business. But I got to tell you, when you travel to a place like this, if you don't believe in something like that, in other words, could you have had a past life in an earlier culture, an earlier society, such as ancient Egypt or ancient Rome? I don't know that, and I'm not sure of it, but I got that feeling. It definitely makes you feel like you know what it would have been like to watch 70,000 screaming Roman spectators watch a gladiator combat or a mock naval battle down on the floor. And here's what the floor would have been, of course, flat, covered by tile and stone. And then, of course, it had openings for the blood. Yes, there was plenty of blood by the end of each game to flow down underneath. But these were the pens where they held the gladiators until it was their time to go up to fight each other. And so they were almost, obviously they were slaves. They were treated like animals. And this was their entertainment for the people of Rome. The emperors would pay for the games and they were free to the citizens. And then we see the cheap seats are up here. They had wooden bleachers. I don't know if you ever went to the Coliseum in Oakland, but I've been to several baseball games there. The cheap seats, the nosebleed seats, some people call them, are always near the top, farthest away from the field. So that's what these were. Then these are the sort of middle price seats. And then this is for the senators. They had to bring pillows because they're hard. I try to sit on these. They're marble, but marble's fancier, at least an indication of fancier digs for the spectators from the Roman Senate. And they had 100 senators, just like we do now, at least for most of their history. Okay, now this is the first of the remaining must-knows. Okay, so now everyone did say they could hear this, so now you can, you should take out your note paper, whatever you use to write notes, and take notes on this slide. Okay, this is the column of Trajan. Column, of course, is Column of Trajan or Trajan, Trajan, from Rome, and the date is 113 AD, or you can say CE if you prefer, 113. That's a little over 100 years after the birth of Jesus. And it's the Golden Age. This was built during the Golden Age of the Roman Empire by the Emperor Trajan. Some call him Trajan. I've heard it pronounced both ways. But the spelling is what matters if it's on the exam. And the reason that is important is because he ruled during the apogee or high point or peak, however you want to write that, I would say peak of power of the Roman Empire. When he ruled, they ruled over more than 50, or at least 50 separate nations that they had conquered and occupied. And they had nearly 200 or over 200 million people when the world only had 450 million, according to most estimates, total population of the entire earth. So if you do the math, that's almost half. That's well over 40% of the world's population under one government and one empire. No other culture has quite achieved that particular. The next closest thing is the British Empire in the late 1800s. They had about a third of the world under their control. Okay, so this was a high point of the Roman Empire, and it was dedicated to one of their major Roman victories. Now, if it's on the exam, this is the view you'll see, okay? Because this has, and let's go up close, the detail that you need to understand the meaning of. What is this depicting? Well, it's a series of spiral, that's the only word for they go in a spiral. I think you can see that from the slide. Upwards, right? An upward twisting spiral of scenes from the conquest of Dacia. Now, if I had a whiteboard or I was in a real classroom, I would write that on the board. It's not hard to spell. Capital D-A-C-I-A. D-A-C-I-A. Dacia was the last province the Romans conquered before they consolidated, held steady for about 200 years or 150, and then began a slow decline. So that's why we call this the peak or the zenith of Roman power, or the Roman Empire. They conquered Dacia. It took them 2 invasions because the Dacians were fierce warriors on the border of Rome. Now, most of you wouldn't know from just verbally describing, but for those of you who have some idea of the geography of Europe, it's now the country of Romania. That's 1,000 miles northeast of Italy. That's a long way. That's on the border of Russia. That's pretty far away from Italy. When they conquered that province, they did it mostly just to get rid of the Dacians' nuisance value because they kept raiding the border provinces across the main river, it's the Danube River. And so the Roman Emperor Trajan decided to wipe them out. Well, the first time he invaded and they fought so fiercely, he just said, okay, let's call it a draw. Just promise not to attack us and we'll withdraw from your province, which they did, or your kingdom. It wasn't a Roman province yet. They kept attacking the Roman guards on the border. So he came back a second time, and then it took 2 years, but he not only defeated them, he had them all massacred. That's how the Romans dealt with things. If you resisted them under normal conditions, they might just take your males over the age of 15 and sell them into slavery and leave the rest of the people to live in poverty and whatever subjugation. But if you resisted them a second time, like the Jews did and the Dacians, they would try to wipe you out. So they did. And what's there now is the country of Romania. Well, just without knowing anything about geography, you can figure out there's a connection. Romania, R-O-M, right, A-N-I-A. And most people know of it today as the birthplace of Dracula. Well, this is long before that. So it's now a Latin-speaking country, and it's the only country in all of Eastern Europe that speaks a Latin language. Because you can guess why, but if not, you should write this. It's part of the meaning. The last part of the meaning here is that the Roman Emperor Trajan, after he wiped out the Dacians, killed all the adult male inhabitants, sold everyone else into slavery, depopulated, you can just say it that way. He massacred and depopulated that entire kingdom, made it a Roman province, and then repopulated it. That's the only word to really write correctly. He repopulated it with Roman farmers and families. So that's why those people have a Roman-based, or Latin, in other words, language now, and why their country is named Romania. It's no coincidence. It's a direct result of this invasion. So here they are, the Roman soldiers, as they are preparing to invade, and there he is, Trajan, addressing them what they're going to do, which is, win this battle or their next several battles. And here they're constructing a siege tower, to attack one of the fortresses of the enemies. And so all you have to say is there are over 5,000 separate figures, bas-relief, of course, and we already gave you that definition, right? Bas-relief figures of Roman soldiers, either preparing to or during the invasion or in battle during that invasion of Dacia. It's a remarkable structure. And now we'll do the formal analysis. It's 130 feet tall, so that's the real space. But it is also has the technique of bas-relief for the figures, the human figures. Well, let's go back. You can see the 130. By the way, this is added. You can probably tell that's a Catholic saint. They definitely wasn't the Romans didn't put that there. That was added by some later pope, which you don't have to write down in your notes, but just for those who are curious. It has nothing to do with Trajan and the Roman Empire. Okay, so here we see the figures. I just showed you a close-up. They have the technique of overlapping, and there is foreshortening on the boats. See, here are the boats they were using to cross the river to invade Dacia. So there's foreshortening and overlapping as techniques, but the real space is the height, 130 feet. It's a cool gray color. The carved, it's all carved line, of course. Carved line creates simulated textures on the Roman soldiers' clothing, on their armor, their hair and faces. It is almost entirely stable with some dynamic detail. I mean, the boats have curved prows, right? But the soldiers are almost all standing upright. Very few of them are leaning or none of them are dying, although they did, some of them. So they're mostly getting ready for battle or marching into battle. And so you see how most of the details on this column are stable human figures with some dynamic details here and there. And then the column itself, of course, is both. I mean, it's straight upright, it's stable, but it's also round. So of course it's dynamic. And then we have the modeling. Remember, modeling is a part of all bas-relief art. You couldn't see the figures without it. So the shadows in the sun create the effect of modeling. And then each panel is balanced if you just draw it down the middle, right? And there is no larger or smaller mass. It's all one mass, unless you want to break down that's too much detail. You don't have to do that. Some of the soldiers are taller than the others, but you can't tell that. So you could just say it's one large mass, a solid, and it is solid marble column. And of course, there's the rhythm of the human figures: heads, hands, arms, legs. Okay, this is the next must know, and this one is a better slide than the one that the slide library provided. This is one of the reasons I'm using my own slides for the last few must knows. Okay, so now you do need to take notes again on this one, and I'll get up closer to it here. I'll give you a close up. This one is the equestrian. Some of you know that word means of or having to do with horses. Statue of Marcus Aurelius. I already told you who he was, but I'll repeat that now because you do want to take notes on who he was as part of the meaning of this slide. Equestrian is EQUESTRIN. Whoops, I'll spell it again. Sorry, EQUESTRIAN. Equestrian means horse. A man on a horse, right, or with a horse. Equestrian statue of Marcus. I'm sure you can all spell Marcus with a U, of course. And Aurelius, his last name is Aurelius. Again, Aurelius. Location is Rome, and the date is 175 AD. So Marcus Aurelius, I've mentioned before, but now I'll restate that briefly. It's really important to know how he was. He was very different than most Roman emperors because he stopped, at least temporarily. I don't know for his whole 20 years as emperor, but for many years, just say for many years, he stopped the persecution of religious minorities, at least in Rome itself. I'm not sure if he could do that with the whole empire because, you know, it was kind of a big empire. So I don't remember if he didn't issue a law. He just stopped having his soldiers arrest, torture, and execute Christians, Jews, Gypsies. Those were the main minorities that were under earlier Roman emperors were tortured and arrested and or forced to convert to Roman religion. So he stopped doing that. That's very enlightened. Another reason is he spoke several, you have to know how many, I think it was 8, but just say several languages beyond just Latin, of course. And he was highly educated. He had, well, they didn't have PhDs then, but he the equivalent of what you could call like a doctorate, you can say, you know, just say high academic degrees or higher academic degrees, which allowed him to be a teacher. They actually think they did have the word professor then in Italian. I think it's professora. In any case, he was a teacher first before he became an emperor. And he wrote books and he was a philosopher. He debated philosophy, he wrote about it. Well-educated man. And when his wife died, like I said earlier, she was declared a goddess, but he never remarried. He could have easily, but he chose not to. He had his favorite horse he rode into battle when there were some battles, and he tried not to fight. He wanted not to be a warrior emperor. But if you saw again the movie, you have to write this now, the movie Gladiator with Russell Crowe and Joaquin Phoenix, that does give you some indication of how he was a reluctant fighter. He had to because the borders of the empire were constantly being encroached. And of course, it's his job to protect the empire. So he would sometimes have to go up to the border, way up into Germany or France or wherever now those countries are, and you know, lead his soldiers into battle to defeat the latest rebellion or something. But in general, he presided over 20 years of mostly peace and prosperity. He was a very popular emperor. So his statue was erected in the Forum and then found buried thousands of years later and re-erected here in front of the city hall. That you don't have to know that, but that's Michelangelo's design. He designed this city hall for the city of Rome during his lifetime. So the statue was rediscovered in the 1500s and put in this spot. And you could add one last fact. It's twice life size. So it's colossal scale, twice normal human size. It means he's 12 feet tall if he were to stand up. And the horse is twice life size. Since he was considered one of the greater Roman emperors and very popular. This was created while he was still emperor now. Once he died in 180. So in any case, it was a way the Roman citizens and the Senate, the government, right? They were just, you know, figureheads. They had no power. He had all the power, but they were trying to show their admiration and appreciation for him. Okay, formal analysis. It's a cool bronze color. It's turned green. Now, of course, when it was new, it's probably a more warm color like you usually think, but it isn't anymore. So you can say it's a cool greenish, right, gray color. There are two masses, the horse and him. So the biggest mass, of course, is the horse and then him. And then we have the rhythm of the horse and the rider's legs and his arms, right? His clothing. All of the semi-texture is very sharp and realistic on his hair, his face, his robes, the horse, all done with carved line. It is almost entirely stable. The horse's legs even are straight. His legs are straight. It is very, very much of a, some figure, see, look, this horse is, this leg, sorry. Only one horse area. This leg of the horse is down straight, and this one is out at a right angle. It's stable. If you would walk all the way around it, you'd see there's hardly anything dynamic except his one raised arm and the top of his head, possibly the snout of the horse, but those are minor details. It's almost entirely stable. It's balanced, of course, it would have to be a figure of two intact living things that are, one riding the other. It's balanced left to right and top to bottom. And then for space, it's twice life size. So that's the real space, but he does overlap the horse. So you could say there's that technique. Okay. Now let's see what we have here. Why am I not supposed to be getting to? Oh yeah, right. Here we go. Let's keep going. There's one more must know, but you have a break now. So you can just put your pens down and listen for a few minutes. Okay, this is that hill up above where Roman emperors and empresses lived. Usually they each had their own house, the married ones, because they had their own set of whatever romantic relationships that they didn't want their spouse interfering in. That was among the upper classes, at least. I'm not saying it was true for most Roman families, but certainly it was for every Roman emperor you've ever heard of, I'm sure, including Augustus Caesar. Well, this is his wife's house, Casa Livia. If you recall last week, those who saw last week's lecture, we saw one of the frescoes from the wall inside this house. And then here's part of it being restored, not the same fresco, a different fresco. When I was there, they had just rediscovered it and were beginning to excavate it. It's now been, I think, fully restored. And here's a detail of one of their minor goddesses, the equivalent of Athena Nike. She's the messenger of one of the same god, or well, the same goddess that the Romans believed in, that the Greeks called Athena. So she's the messenger of one of the main gods, and she's delivering a message of some kind there. And this would be actually, it's faded a bit here because it's, hey, it's 2,000 years old and it probably need to be restored. It probably has been by now, but you could see enough when you stood in front of it that this is a fresco of, handmaidens or servants of the Empress Livia, the wife of Augustus, the first Roman emperor, doing her hair, getting her ready for some big evening event. And this was the Circus Maximus, where they had chariot races. And this was one of the ruins, of course, of one of the larger bathhouses. They were free. They had 3 temperatures: the cold baths for the poor folks and working class, lukewarm baths for middle class and people with some wherewithal, like merchants and shop owners, and maybe minor local officials. And then for the upper classes, the ruling class, they had heated baths with slave attendants and attending them. Yeah, this is the view I actually meant to show you of the Circus Maximus. The chariot races were conducted. This isn't even half of it. I was standing about halfway down this wall, of course, on this side here where I stood to get a view because the light was, fading quickly. It was late afternoon, but you get some idea of how huge it would be if it's twice this long. And these are not even all the seats. They went up to about here. It held more people than the Coliseum. Their estimates vary between 150 and 250,000 people. That's an overview from the hill that we were just looking at above which is above the forum, but now it's also a good place to view or get a good view of the modern city of Rome. When I say modern, I take that with a grain of salt. There's not a building in this photo that's less than 500 years old. That's not old in Rome. Now we're going to see the last must-know coming up. That's Augustus's tomb, which has recently been partially restored. His body was never found. It was stolen, I'm sure, a long time ago. It was inside that arched opening. But now we get to the last new must-know for the first half. Again, this one could be on the midterm, so you want to take notes. The last slide for tonight that you have to write down the meaning and the formal elements. This is Ara Pakis. Okay. Let's see. Now, did I not? I might have taken it off the list. And if I did, you guys get a break, but I still want you to know what it is. It's really an amazing site. Let's see. No, it's on here. It's on the previous page. If you flip back to week 7, sorry. That's it. We had to skip over it because I didn't have these slides available during the time we were lecturing last week. Okay, 2 words, the title, A-R-A, and then Pakis, P-A-C-I-S. Ara Pakis means the Arch of Peace. Rome, of course, 9 BC or BCE. This is a monument to commemorate is the right word. If you don't want to write that, it's a long word. You could say celebrate, I guess, or commemorate is a better word. The 20th anniversary of Augustus Caesar becoming emperor. He actually became emperor in 30 BC, but they didn't declare him officially until 29. So do the math, minus 20, you're at 9 BC. 20 years of ruling with one emperor. They had never had an emperor at all, let alone expected any one person. Well, they did under Julius Caesar. He didn't even last a year. He was assassinated, of course. So they were happy, the people of Rome, to pay through their taxes, and the Senate voted to do this, to create a monument to commemorate the anniversary, the 20th anniversary of his officially becoming the first Roman emperor. So what do we see here? Wow, this is like a moment in time, frozen and perfectly preserved. By the way, it was buried under the streets of Rome for thousands of years, and Mussolini, not the person himself, but some of his soldiers digging a tunnel for the subway system that now operates throughout Rome, found this. Luckily, they didn't destroy it in the process. They brought it up, from the ground, and here it is on display in a sheltered glass case. So you can walk up to it and see it. These are the first 4 Roman emperors. They're all on this. And it shows the parade that happened on the day they led, the city of Rome went, to celebrate outdoors, of course, in the Coliseum. Wasn't around yet. So they had, by then they had some other amphitheater before that. So they celebrated with games. There were gladiator combats long before the Coliseum was built. And other, feasts and, they had fireworks. Well, not like we think of today. Just say they had pyrotechnic shows and music, of course, performances and plays and everything dedicated to him. Here he is. Let's get up close. That's Augustus. He's already getting, a little older there. He was in his 50s when he lived to be nearly 80 years old. That's a long time back then. And then we have here, most people feel that this is Tiberius, his successor, who took over after him. Now I'm going to try to move this just a little bit up this way. But I think it's this one, and that's because Tiberius was a depressive. He had chronic depression. He was alcoholic, and he was, corrupt isn't the word. I can't even tell you some of the things he did once he became emperor to people that he chose to have forced to come to the palace to entertain him in ways that are grotesque is the word, but that's the kind of person he was. Now, he wasn't Augustus's first choice. He was the first choice of Livia. That would be his second wife. And there she is, as she would be right behind Augustus. She's the empress, he's the emperor. And here's her oldest son. Okay, well, you can't quite see him from, yeah, there he is, who would become the next emperor. So most historians agree that it was the guy sitting slightly behind the front row, looking a little downcast. So that'd be the first 2 emperors. And then we have little, he's not a baby at this point, but you could say baby, Caligula. Well, if you don't know who he was, you don't have to write this, or you can. I have to be, let's say, circumspect about what I say about him. He was about the sickest man that ever ruled any major empire, certainly the Roman Empire. He was the 3rd emperor. He took over, actually, most historians think he actually had Tiberius, right? Augustus's adopted son, the 2nd emperor, murdered, suffocated in his bed or poisoned. We don't know for sure, but there's some evidence. In any case, he took over under mysterious circumstances, and he became the cruelest and most mentally unstable of all the Roman emperors. He impregnated his own sister, and when she was 8 months pregnant, he had her split open, killing her, of course, in the most gruesome way, and the baby literally executed in front of him. Why? Because he thought that that baby would become a god and challenge him. He believed, in other words, that he was a god on earth and no one else should come along that might challenge that status. The man was obviously certifiable. Eventually, let's go back down to a little more pleasant successor. Claudius, one of the all-time great emperors of the Roman Empire, and a reformer and a humanist, and he didn't have a lot of, few of his enemies who tried to plot against him. He probably had them executed, I'm sure, but he didn't go out of his way to abuse or be cruel to anybody. He actually did a lot of reform things for he built a new port, just say he did a lot of good things. The people of Rome really liked him, and he was a humanist. That actually is a word they would have used in Latin. I guess it's a different spelling. Someone who believes that you shouldn't treat people badly because they disagree with you, right, or are different than you. So he was the polar opposite of Caligula. How did he become emperor? Last thing to say about the meaning of this is that when Caligula had been on the throne for 4 years, terrorizing everyone around him, including his own bodyguards. Some of them, the bodyguards that were they call Praetorian Guard, you have to know it, just say his special assigned bodyguards, got together, plotted to wait until he was coming out of one of the games. It wasn't the Coliseum, that wasn't there, but one like that. Just say an amphitheater. When he was alone in the hallway, because his wife didn't go with him that day, they stabbed him to death like 40 or 50 times. They hated him so much. And then as a joke, they declared Claudius the next emperor, thinking he would be like a puppet in their hands. Oh, they got that wrong. He was nobody's puppet. He was a very powerful and wise ruler. And he was differently able, we would say today. He had, they think polio or something. One leg was club foot. He might have been born that way. Or might have come from polio infection. He had a speech impediment, like, I don't know if you know, Biden was born with and still has occasionally. What do you call it? Stuttering syndrome. You never get rid of it totally. He had it the whole time he was emperor. So people would sometimes laugh at him, but if they stopped to listen to what he had to say, it wasn't funny because he had some serious proposal or law or reform that he was always trying to enact. And then he also had he was a hunchback. So he had 3 strikes against him, and yet he became one of their best emperors. So there you have the first 4 Roman emperors: Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula, who would grow up to become a monster, and then one of the other good ones, Claudius. There they are. So that's the whole meaning of this. Of course, these are, well, it's not obvious. They're life-size figures in bas-relief. And I'm sure you can see them here, how they line this. These are my own slides, right? It's just fascinating. Okay, so let's do a formal analysis. If it's on the exam, this is the view you'll have. It's balanced. Of course, these figures are almost all very close to the same height. The men are roughly the same size as each other. The women close to the same size. There's not a huge difference. So you can't really say there's a larger or smaller mass. Maybe Claudius is slightly larger than the others. He was 6 feet tall. And in his youth, he was quite muscular. But I don't see much difference. So you could just say they were roughly equal masses. And they're arranged left to right equally. So they're balanced. And then we have the rhythm, of course, of their robes, their heads, their arms and hands. All done simulated texture is superb on the hair, on the clothing, done with carved line. Of course, there is modeling. There always is. It's a given. It's created by the sun, but it is part of the composition because without it, we wouldn't see the details. So that's from the sun coming through the glass. It's surrounded by glass to protect it. And then we have, let's see, stable. It's almost entirely stable, except for some, of course, of the sashes on the robes or some of the details and the tops of their heads. But the figures are all standing upright, even the 2 children. Some people think this is Nero, but I did the math. He wouldn't have been born yet. He would have been somebody else's relative. Okay, and then we have the color is actually a warm color. You can't tell that from here, so I won't take points off if you say it looks cool. This slide is slightly discolored. My slide is not, but when the slide librarian copied it, she somehow had a slightly more blue filter. I don't know why, but you could sort of see that. It's a yellow marble, so it's actually warm. Okay, we're going to wrap this up and take an early break, so let's do that. We'll finish with this. This is the this segment, I mean, but I'm not going to rush through it because I covered it last week. But if you weren't here, you want to, listen now, and then maybe you should, well, you definitely should watch the YouTube video that I posted last Friday of the slides of ancient Rome, because this is the last one on that video. And that also, along with the Coliseum, this now is the Pantheon. Those two slides have a very high probability of one, not both, but one or the other, of being on the midterm. This was that temple I told you last week, but in case you weren't here, that was dedicated. The word itself, the name Pantheon, means the temple of all the gods. So this was dedicated to all the Roman gods. And it has a Greek temple front, right? A portico, it's called, right? The column porches, and a pediment, like you'd see in the temple in Athens that we saw 2 weeks ago, right? The Parthenon. But the building is Roman. Behind it, the Romans built these huge, massive, round-walled temples. The Greeks built short, smaller versions of round temples, but nothing anywhere near this big. And the Romans invented domes. So that dome is concrete. So this building has two of the totally original Roman inventions out of that list that's on your, we're going to go over this and cut that list down. The list of terms to know, cut it way down, like 30 to 40%. The same thing with the slide study list from the syllabus. At the end of the break, the start of the discussion of the exam, that's the first thing we'll do. So you do want to make sure you stick around for that. So that way you won't have to waste time reviewing the videos from YouTube, of course, is how you do that. Slides that aren't even going to be on the exam. We'll cut about 40%. Okay, but for now, just remember that 2 of the 5 things on the list of Roman inventions from ancient Rome are right here, concrete and domes. So now let's go up closer to it. And you can see how massive columns of 46-foot tall marble columns are dwarfed by the walls. The walls were covered in marble. Again, another, I keep saying emperor, another pope. They think they're emperors sometimes. In the old days, they used to act like it. They had their own army this far back in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. And one of them just stole all the marble to build several neighborhood churches in this area of Rome. Anyway, this is the largest dome building from ancient Rome ever built, and it's still standing. If you weren't here, you could use to write this now, but of course, the full detailed notes of the meaning are in that video on YouTube. So the columns are 46 feet high, so that would put the portico at about 60 feet. But the building behind it, let's back up one more time before we're going to go inside and see how it looks inside, is 144 feet, the top of the dome. That's more than a 14-story skyscraper. So if you were to walk inside this building, you could literally look up to see something the equivalent of a 14-story skyscraper above your head. We'll go inside and see it in a minute. And then the concrete is used to create the dome. No one had conceived of the idea of concrete before the Romans. Some engineers in Rome invented it. Just like we use concrete today, only their concrete lasts a lot longer than a modern American concrete.
Yeah.
Okay, so the dome is 142 feet wide, I think, and 144 feet high, over 140 feet in each dimension. So, by the way, here's Sven. Actually, I know you guys, what? This was a Swedish National Geographic photographer. I think that magazine still exists, right? Anyway, he was there on assignment, and he was 7'2" or something. And he agreed with his camera in his hand to stand there to pose for me so he could help demonstrate how massive these columns are. And then when you look at the columns and compare them to the walls behind them that are 3 times as tall, you get an idea of how amazing this and immense this building is. Let's go inside. Here we see the spotlight effect, I call it. Whoops, whoa, I didn't want to do that, not yet. Let's go back to that, where the dome has a hole in the middle, and that's not an accident or an afterthought. It was part of the design where you're supposed to be able to look up. So let's now go ahead and see that, up to that, or through that hole, and see the gods you're praying to while you're inside praying. Of course, the purpose of the building is for prayer, of course, and contemplation, and maybe even memorial services for a deceased loved one. And then if you were good enough, the gods might look down on you and grant your wish or answer your prayers. But the other thing about it, I mentioned last week, but for those who weren't here, as in most of you weren't, these indentations, that's no minor feat or minor detail. Those are what allow the dome to sit there in perfect condition, not a crack in it for nearly 2,000 years. It was finished in 125 AD. And not need any repairs because it's lightened. The weight of this dome would be so intense, so heavy, it would crush itself. It would collapse of its own weight if it weren't for this engineering device invented by the Romans. These are coffers, they're called. So coffers reduce the weight of the entire dome by 50%, allowing it to be stable and strong enough to survive 2,000 years. See, look, that's a seam in the concrete. It's not a crack. There's no damage. No repairs have ever been needed. Plus, the hole allows for the rainwater to come in and float down. Well, we'll go and we'll see that. Hang on. This is the spotlight effect I was talking about earlier, right? And here's what's left of the gold on the marble. There's actual gold still left from 2,000 years ago. Gold paint probably, or gold covering. It's called gilt. So they gilded the inside of this. And then let's see, I think I have just one more slide. Yeah, this one. Look at this massive interior. Those doors are 25 feet tall. And the floor slopes so that when the rain splatters, it rains in Rome a heck of a lot. It's more than we get here in California all the time, every season of the year. And so the water will never, ever flood. It's never flooded because the water the floor is tilted. So the water goes sliding down into openings in the side of the walls. Obviously you can't see them between the columns. And there's a pipe that leads the water down to the river. So it never has flooded, no matter how heavy and how long it rains. And we'll end with this last amazing fact here. I was starting to tell you about the doors. These are the original bronze doors. They're 25 feet tall. You can imagine how heavy they are. They have the original lock on them. And this is the part that blew my mind. I watched this happen every morning at about 8 a.m. I got up early to see this. I was there for like 10 days, so I had time to plan ahead. These doors are opened by a messenger from the Vatican because it's a Catholic church. The Catholic Church owns it now. But it's open to the public as a monument. So they take the original Roman key out of a box, turn it in the lock, and open the door. No WD-40 needed. Now that's what you call building for the ages. I don't know any other culture that can do something like that. Build doors and locks and keys that all still work with each other 2,000 years after they were finished. Okay, we are now going to take a break. 20 minutes. Yeah, 20 minutes. And I'm going to do, I think I will have figured out the unmuting thing. So let's go ahead now and do, for me, I'm going to mute myself now, of course. So don't go away because we're going to do the discussion of the exam and it will help all of you study more effectively and be able to get the best grade possible. Okay, so we'll start 20. Okay, during the break, my daughter and I looked this over, and the best thing I can think of, I hope we at least found a partial solution. Couldn't figure out why it would just automatically mute everybody when I didn't do anything to any of the mute buttons. But she found an extra function which says allow students to unmute themselves. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Let's see now if that would work. Then you individually should be able to do that.
Can you hear us now?
I hope.
Hi.
Now, um,
Hello?
no,
Hi.
this is the first time I've seen the blue box like that saying mute. Like I
I
said,
don't
I
think,
didn't do anything different than I've done every week, and it's been working fine. So now I am going to keep my fingers crossed. We can still do the review, but I want very much to allow you all to ask questions live and in real time. So if you all have, each of you individually at your, computers, somewhere you should be able to see in the control panels, what have you, the options buttons, something that allows you to unmute yourself. I pressed that, well, my daughter did it. We were looking around at the break for several minutes. And hopefully that at least allows you to physically unmute yourself, I guess, each time you want to speak. That's how a lot of professors teach their entire semesters. Like I said, I don't like doing that, especially not when you might have questions on a review like this. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Okay. All right. You did already, meaning, oh, great. Thank you for that. Are you saying that that still doesn't
yes.
allow you, because
Can
you're
you
trying to
hear me?
speak now? Because if you are and I can't hear you, I'm frustrated as all
Okay.
get out, because this is just bizarre. So I guess I'm going to have to hope IT people answer their phone for a change tomorrow, because I want to do this tomorrow night. And those, you know what I'll do? I'll send you an email if it's been resolved. So worst case is if you have burning questions that you can't answer. In other words, I'm hearing from what last student said, that it's still not possible for you to unmute yourself even, correct? Yeah, I guess. What is going on? I did not, I think of one other thing I can, let's see, recording, it's recording. Let's see. Well, of course I could see chat questions. Yeah, you're saying you did, Lydia. Yeah, I appreciate your input, but so no, I don't. I just have a speaker on, speaker off. You can hear me, correct? Because if you can't hear me, obviously you would have told me that before we started the lecture on the last Roman slides. Because otherwise we really would have to call this a session ending tonight early. But at this point, my only other thought is I can check the chat function like I am right now, okay? Okay, that's good. So I will do what I don't usually do. I will just keep the chat window open, but the problem is let's see if I can get it out of the way here, because I need to have the middle of this. No, it stays right in the middle. It's not like those, well, maybe, wait, maybe I can do this. The reason I want to move it away from the middle is because I want to show you the test. So you guys can ask questions if they're really urgent that way for now, and then hopefully, certainly by the next class, I will. Of course, there shouldn't be any questions during the test. So if for some, God forbid, reason that it still is a problem during the exam, that's not going to be an issue, because the questions obviously can be sent to me by chat. Then they shouldn't disrupt people while they're taking the test. As you know, I would tell my students in a live class, in-person class, if you have a question, raise your hand. I'll come back to where you're sitting. So that's the equivalent of the chat function. So, okay, let's see. All right. So thank you all for at least sending me those chats. I'll keep that window open. Here's the first thing we want to do. We want to take you all should join me here now, and take the syllabus in front of you. This is going to be very valuable, because what we're doing now is, I call it the reduction exercise, or whatever you want to call it, reducing the total number. As I said right here on the first page, that I would reserve the right to cut slides as we go, which I've done in a few cases. But at the review time for the final, the week before or midterm, sorry, and the final, each will cut at least 40% of the total. So in order to do that, we have to count, and there's a varying number of slides from one semester to another. I add or remove slides from the syllabus so they don't become stale and exactly the same slides for every lecture. So here, let's do this together. But I don't think I'll have a problem with just counting slowly. How many slides are there? And then I can do the math in my head. I don't need a calculator to figure out what is the minimum I'm going to cut is 40%. What's 40% of that total? You all following what I'm saying? We're going to do this as a mathematical preliminary before we start cutting. So we'll know how many slides I have committed myself to cutting, and then we'll go over them week by week, and I'll cross them out and tell you to do that as we go. so that you'll know those are slides you don't have to even think about. They won't possibly be on the exam. That's what we're doing, okay, at this point. All right, so we have 4 the first week, 4 the second week, obviously that's 8. Then 10, 11, 12, 13, 15 by the end of week 3. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 29 by the end of week 5. If you want to count along with me, you're welcome to. 29 and then 30, 31, 5, 6, 37. And by the end of week 7, 38, 39, 40, 50. Well, that's easy. That means I have to cut 20. That's a lot. So that will leave you with only 30 to study. And we'll talk about how the test is being given in a few minutes. But let's do this first. Go all the way back, everyone, if you didn't already, to week 1, first page, top of that page on your syllabus. And let's go over these and cross them out as we go together. Okay. I'm going to cut 3 of the first 4 from week 1 because they're not during the era, the periods we're covering. These are more for R2, 2.2 or 1.2. So cross off, okay, under week 1, 3 of them. The Libyan Sibyl, cross it out as we go, okay? Leave the next one, Laocoon group. Okay, sorry, I should be looking at, so I'm looking down at my sheet, of course. Then cross off the 3rd one because we're not covering Van Gogh in ancient art, obviously, even though we talked about him the first night. Wheatfield and cypress trees, cut that one. All right, then the final one would be the 3rd one, the last slide, Guggenheim Museum. Cross that off too, okay? Everybody's got that. All right, moving on to week 2. Let's cut Bison. Okay. Yeah, I don't want to cut any of those yet. I may have to go back and cut a couple from earlier weeks, but we'll see if we can end up with 20 by the time we get to week 8. Okay, moving on to the top of the 2nd page, that'd be week 3. We already cut head of a ruler from Nineveh, but if you weren't here, cross that out. Okay, and then I'm going to cut Asher, Nazar, Paul killing lions. It's not that I don't like it, it's that they're similar. A and B, Asher, Nazar, Paul is a lot harder word to spell, isn't it? So the second from the bottom. For now, I'm going to leave the others. Okay, so moving on to week 4. We're going to cut the Pylon of Ramses II at Karnak. Okay. And then I'm going to cut, I don't want to cut it, but we have to cut more than one each week. Temple of Hatshepsut, because the slide of it wasn't very good. It's what they had at the slide over. It didn't even show the whole structure. So that's the 2 middle ones. Temple of Hatshepsut and Pylon of Ramses II. Okay, moving on to week 5. Female figure for Cyclades, cross that off. Beehive tomb at Mycenae. I can see we're going to have to go back and add a couple. But moving on to week 6. We already cut Young Warrior. If you didn't already, now you should, from Riachi, Young Warrior. Okay, Koros. No, actually, that one's important. Temple of Athena Nike. Yeah, cut that off. Cross that off. And I got at least one more. Let's see. We need to have at least one archaic statue, so I'll leave Koros. Okay. Dipylon base, cross that off, Dipylon base. I actually forgot to put Athens in there anyway. That might be for the location, which would maybe confuse some of you because I told you to write it in. So again, that's 3. I will say them again that you cross off for week 6. Dipylon base, Young Warrior, from Riachi and Temple of Athena Nike. Okay, week 7. We already cut Tomb of the Lionesses. Let's cut Porta Augusta because there's an old black and white photograph from Perugia. Need to have at least one fresco, I think. So one sculpture, sarcophagus, Pont du Gard, Augustus Supreme. Okay, I'm going to, I know, so we just did it, but Arapakis from Rome. Got to cut enough to get to 40%. So that's, again, 3 slides under week 7. Tomb of the Lionesses, Porta Augusta, and Arapakis. Moving on to week 8. Equestrian statue of Marcus Aurelius. It's kind of a long title, right? And then I think I will, I guess I'll cut the Arch of Titus, the reason being that it's hard to see the figures, a close-up of the figures. And it could be confusing because the next one is also one with Roman soldiers' bas-relief figures that are similar in that way. So I'm trying to simplify things for all of you. So go ahead and cut, no, let's make it the column of Trajan. Yeah, let's make it the column of Trajan, the one we just saw tonight, sorry. Okay, I don't think that's 20, but it should be close. Let's see how many that is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 18, so I need to cut 2 more to get to the 40% reduction I promised you. Okay, so I'm going to cut the throne of Tutankhamun because of the 2, the more famous, I mean, they're both about the same person, would be the one everyone has seen before you took this class, I hope, is the funerary mass. So we'll leave that and cut off the throne of Tutankhamun under week 4, okay? We need to cut 1 more. Okay. I guess I'll cut the palace complex at Canasos. Okay, so that's 40%. That's 20 slides, reducing from 50 down to 30 that you should still study. Now, I have my chat window open, so at least I can hear your comments that way or see them. Does anybody need me to repeat, or do you think I should just repeat the whole list one more time? Make sure you all got it. So I will if you ask me to. Obviously, I now have to depend on your.
I didn't get week.
Oh, okay. All right. Why don't I just do the whole list? Yeah, one more time slowly and follow along. So then we can move on to reducing the list of terms to know the same way. And then I'll discuss how to study for the exam and how it's given and how it's graded. Okay, that's usually a good idea anyway. So 1 week at a time. We'll do it slowly and clearly. Week 1, cut 3. In other words, you could just keep the Laocoon group because the other 3 you should cut, which are the Libyan Sibyl, cross that out if you didn't already, Wheatfield and Cypress Trees, and the Guggenheim Museum, okay? Moving on to week 2, we're just cutting 1, Bison from France. Okay, then week 3, we're cutting just 2, Head of a Ruler from Nineveh and Ashurnazarpal, Killing Lions. Okay, week 4, we're cutting 3, Temple of Hatshepsut, Pylon of Ramses II at Karnak, and the Throne of Tutankhamun. Okay, we're leaving the funerary mask of King Tut. Week 5, we're cutting 3 more, Female Figure from Cyclades, Palace Complex at Canasos, and Beehive Tomb at Mycenae.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to week 6, we're cutting 3. Dipylon Vase, Young Warrior, right? The 4th one down, and then Temple of Athena Nike. We're leaving Nike Wing of Victory. Week 7, we're cutting 3. Temple of the Lionesses, Porta Augusta from Perugia, and Arapakis, the one we saw just about half an hour ago. Because it could get confusing. So I'm leaving the column. No, I'm not leaving the column. I'm sorry. Next, last one, week 8, there's 2 more. Column of Trajan we're cutting, and the equestrian statue of Marcus Aurelius, but we're leaving the Arch of Titus the Coliseum and the Pantheon. And I did tell you that certain slides were particularly important to study, and those are ones you should have been noting as we were going along. But I will give you an extra little thing. I don't usually do this. If you didn't do it during the lectures, or you missed one or two and you watched them on YouTube, you should have noticed then, because I said them on the recorded lectures, of course. But if you didn't do it, you can do it now. The Hall of Bowls, I would put an X or a check next to that. Very important, very high possibility of giving you a little hints, but I'm not saying for sure. Stonehenge, oh, absolutely, very important. So those two are high on the probability list for week 2. Week 3, the ziggurat of Ur, face of a woman from Uruk, and the stele of Hammurabi. Those are all three are high probability, or possibility, I shouldn't say probability, but possibility of being on the midterm. Week 4, the Pylon of Narmer, the Great Sphinx. I'm sorry, I know it sounds like, but they're all so important. The Great Pyramids, of course. And the Funerary Mask of King Tut. So that is more than usual, just because they're all such distinct, famous works. Okay, week 5, it's just going to be 1, I think. Well, 2. Snake Goddess and Bull Jumping Fresco, both from Crete. Okay, and then Spear Bearer under week 6, and Parthenon. Those two are really high possibilities. And finally, well, 2 more. Week 7, Sarcophagus from Cerveteri and Pont du Gard from Nimes, France. Oh, and Augustus. I'm sorry, I almost forgot. Augustus of Prima Porta. Those 3, there's very likely one of those will be on the midterm. And finally, under week 8, there's 2 that are important. The Arch of Titus, sorry, I meant the Coliseum. The Coliseum and the Pantheon. Those 2 under the last new week 8, are also high on the list of possibles. For the midterm, okay. All right, let's take out, if you didn't already have it, I'll give you a minute to take out the list of terms to know. We're going to reduce that list by a similar percentage, so let me do the counting now on that. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 terms. So 20%, no, 40%, sorry. That's pretty easy. Let's see. 8. Have to cut 8. 8 of the terms to know. So this is the list of terms to know. You should have that in front of you, and we'll cross out as we go. Cross out cherub. Okay. Cross out amulet. All right. Cross out obelisk on the next page, second page. Let's see, got to cut at least 8. Oh, sorry, at the bottom of the first page, I meant to say cross out animal style. Okay, so now we have 1, 2, 3, 4. I need to get 2 more. Okay, pediment on page 2. Again, I'll repeat this list. Pediment. Cross out necropolis. And then let's see, concrete domes, arches. In the list of things invented by ancient Romans, I will only ask you for 2, probably, if I even ask that question at all. So cross off interstate road system. How many does that leave? Let's see, what have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, we have to cross off one more. So let's go back to page 2, and then I'll repeat the whole list. Okay, and let's cross off Kuros. Okay, one more time. 8 slides, not slides, I apologize, sorry. 8 of the terms from the list of terms to know. And I'll explain how those might come up in just a moment when we get to discussing the test itself, okay? But for now, let's make sure you all have the same list, that you don't have to even study the definitions for these 8 words. Cherub, amulet, animal style. On the next page, obelisk, kuros, pediment, necropolis, and interstate road system from that list. So you would only need to remember 2 or 3 of them anyway. If I ask a question about things invented by the Romans, I won't ask you for all 5 remaining ones. I might ask you for 2 of them. Okay, so that's 8 out of 20, which is 40%. So let us do this. This is how the test is going to look. I'm going to hold it up one page at a time. You can see why I wanted to have at least a clear space in the middle of the screen for you all to see this. And you can take screenshots if you want. But let me do this first. How am I going to give you the test? I'm going to send it to you as a PDF, as we are required. In any case, it's the only kind of document that, according to the JC, is the most accessible for almost everybody. Well, everybody should be able to open a PDF. You've all been able to open the ones I've sent you this semester. So when I send that to you, it will be, so you actually could start by answering the true false questions. I'll show you what they look like in a minute. But the point is, there are 3 sections on the exam. We're going to go over those as you look at the sample of the midterm. You will get, it's 2 pages. It's a 2-page PDF document. You will all get that the day before the test, which I'm giving in real time. I've said this already. I put an email out, but I will repeat and elaborate a little on that and send that email out to all of the tonight's section students on Monday by, let's say, 6 p.m. That's more than 24 hours before the test itself. I will give you guys about 10 minutes. That's reasonable to actually check in, hopefully, because tests, we don't want to push it back too far because people will just be sitting there waiting, those that are logged in on time. I usually log you guys in about 2 or 3 minutes, right after. Oh, okay. Do you want to leave me a chat question, or maybe I can do this? I don't know. Does that? See, it says mute all, but I didn't do that. So I think I can do it this way. Ask to unmute. You can't unmute yourself is what you've been saying. Several of you have said. Then I have to talk to somebody. See, I checked the box I'm looking at that my daughter figured out during the break where it says, allow participants to unmute themselves. I don't know what else tonight at the moment. I can't think of anything else to add to that. It's frustrating, I know. I see the Chris Smith looks like he's not muted. That's strange. And Lydia, the reason I'm saying that is Andrea, Ariana, and Ava, you all have icons which show you're muted. Now some of you aren't. So I guess it is possible that some of you, I hope, anybody who's just tried to unmute themselves, could you speak up?
I can
Let me
hear
know
you.
if you have a question, or even just say hi. No?
I can hear you.
There must be something wrong with either it's a
Okay.
glitch or else
I don't think I could
but my
hear us.
microphone is, I haven't touched it or altered it since the last 8 weeks or 7. Okay, does anybody want to ask me a question on the, look like Lydia had one, I think it was Lydia, the chat window, which you see is open, or at least I can see it.
Oh, somebody's playing here.
This is very strange. Okay, here we go. The point is you're going to get a PDF of 2 pages, which will be the exam format. And when you get it, I will hold up the first page now.
Ah,
You pretty
Are you
much
sleeping already?
need to download it. Why? Whoops, let's hold it up. Okay, because this is the only way I talk to my readers and how their other professors are doing this, and also Michael Healy, that was the person I told you helped me get up to at least minimal competence on Zoom, and also to a couple of other art history instructors currently teaching. Even though Michael Healy doesn't teach art history, there are some similarities in how people have to give exams. So when you get this, if you'll print it out, then you have two options. So listen carefully, and any questions you have at the moment, you should send me a chat or an email later if you think of one later on. But I think I'll try to answer all your questions that you can think of tonight by chat, I guess. Well, you chat to me the question and I'll answer it verbally, of course, to speed things up. All right, so you see that you're going to need to convert. You have two choices on how to submit your completed exam to me, and you have 48 hours to do it, so you have plenty of time. It'll be given in real time, and you can write right on the exam sheet. That's why I said print it out. If you prefer doing it that way, just like you would in an in-person, live class, as I've done in all my classes prior to this semester. After writing your full name, of course, and all of that on it, you can use the back side, which is blank, because you will probably need, some of you, more room for the second half than might be more room. I mean, you may want to provide longer answers. That's optional, but I'll get to the essay part in a minute. So before you get to the essay part, what's going to happen? You're going to have 5 slides to identify, and those won't take most of you more than a minute. But I'll give you 2 minutes for each one. So there goes the first 10 minutes. That's why you don't want to check in late. However, if you do, it's not a disaster with this remote system we have, because you can go back and see it on the posted YouTube video. But it's better if you want to check in and have the test not hanging over your head. You've got other midterms, other papers and assignments, of course. It's best to try and do it in real time, and then you have the time to check your answers or whatever. That's what I recommend, but you do it however you want. However, if you're going to do the real-time answers, I would recommend you print. Please print. Don't use your cursive. I don't care if your third grade teacher told you had the best cursive in all of her classes. It's harder always to read cursive. So please print as neatly as you can. The full type, just like it was on the syllabus, the date rounded to a 0. Remember, you don't have to get the exact year. So that's giving you a little break right there. If the date isn't already rounded to a 0, you can do that for the date and the location or artist, whatever was on the syllabus for each slide. Okay, there'll be 5. They'll be on the screen for 2 minutes each. That's plenty of time. More than enough. Most of you will be twiddling your thumbs before the next slide comes up. So once that's done, we go to the second part, which is true, false. And I'm not going to show you those because I actually made them up already. Otherwise, I'll be giving away. At least that you need to do a little bit of your own initiative on. It's above where the white piece of paper is. And it's just like most true, false things. It's literally just right. You could even do a T and an F, but sometimes people's T's and F's don't look distinct. So really you should, it says the instructions are right on the top of the second page. Please write true or false. Or you could just circle whether it's true or false, but there's a blank line to fill in. Whether 5 actual questions where I ask questions about one of the slides, 5 different, of course, questions on 5 different slides. About the meaning, is it true that this and this or so, whatever, about, any one of the must-know slides that we didn't just cut. They'll be pretty straightforward and easy to figure out. And of course, you can take your time to look that up. Whoops, there we go. So that's the second section, and I will give you 10 minutes because some of you are going to be looking them up. Of course, it's no book test, so you have every option or right to do that during the exam. Then the last section is this one where you do this short essay. That's the longest segment where you get 15 minutes for each slide, and you can always go back because of the open book nature of this, whoops, I almost gave that one away. Which is I think the most important part. It's where you demonstrate that you understood something, not just the facts, the raw, title and dates of slides, but something about the meaning from all the notes I gave you in each lecture. And again, you have plenty of time to go look back if you want at your own notes or however you want to do it. And these each are worth how much? Well, you first identify the slide on the top line. So that's worth 1 point for each fact you get correct. And then you can see there's a lot of room. So that's why you're going to need the back, if you're doing it by hand, the back of this page, to write the rest of your answers. And what do I mean by short essays for each of those 3 slide essay or slide analysis questions? I don't want you to give me half of it. Well, you can give me half a page, but don't give me a full page. It's too much. 2 paragraphs, each of 6 or more sentences. Why? Because each one is worth 6 points, each paragraph. 1, please keep them separate. I'll repeat this before the test starts, and it's written on the exam sheet, which you will have 24 hours before the test. So should be no reason for any confusion once you start writing. Please keep them separate so that I and the readers don't have trouble figuring out which you were trying to use as the meaning and which was the formal analysis. Keep them separate. You don't have to label them unless you want to, but you've already done that, most of you anyway, on your papers. And 6 facts about the meaning out of, dozen. Sometimes they give you more than a dozen facts on any given must-know slide. So one of the slides will be on the screen for 15 minutes during the real-time portion of the exam, and then you can go back and look at them again on YouTube, of course. And you identify them first, then you give me 2 short paragraphs, 6 facts about the meaning, and you can guess 6 of the 9 elements. You don't have to do all 9 for the other half. And if you do the math, 6, 6, and 3, 15 points for each of those total. So you end up with 45 points on that section if you get everything right on the slide essay part. And I didn't say this, but the other portion is also worth 15 points because there are 3 facts for each must-know slide when you just identify them on the first section of the test, right? And so if you get, I'm going to give you, 3 points for each one you get right. You know, the title spelled correctly, the location spelled correctly, and the date rounded to a 0. So 3 times 3 is 9, and there are 5 of those. You don't have to be a math whiz to see that's 45 points. And then the true, false are each worth 2 points times 5 is 10. There's your 100 points. So it's worth 100 points if you get everything correct. And then after the test is over, of course, I'll be recording it for later posting on YouTube. We take our normal 20-minute break slightly early, and then we don't go away because then we start right in on the new material that could be on the final, which will be, of course, on early Christian art. You can see that from the book. But at this point, I think you're studying probably, I'll give you guys a little more of a hint than I already have. If you have limited time to study, or like you're one of the people that hasn't finished your paper yet, you want to try and get it done before the test so you don't get backlogged. I recommend that because it gets much harder to get caught up and to get a good grade if you wait till the last 2 or 3 weeks to do both papers and the final. So in any case, if you don't have a lot of time, as much time as you want, I would recommend studying most carefully the ones I just told you with a little X by them, or whatever you did to mark the most important ones that have the highest possibility of being on the exam. Because if you get all those, any of those right on the exam, you're going to get the majority right there. Or, I mean, you would get at least a B. I might have one of those that is not from that subset with a little extra notations that isn't, already mentioned as extremely important, but still on the list. And remember, the list is now down to 30 slides, out of which you will be shown 8. Okay, from Jessica. Okay. Yes, correct, Jessica. The first half will be the midterm, literally an hour, and we'll start at about 10. I might, wait till 15 after, but I don't want you guys to have to sit around for too long. Of course, you can, whatever, ask other questions about the upcoming slides or even slides that, you were studying and might still have a question about before the test. Of course, no live questions during the test. If there are clarifications, you could do this with the chat like we're just doing now. So yes, it'll be, we'll start the test. I'm going to say 10 after, because if I say 15 after, people will show up between 7:15 and 7:20. I want everyone that's going to be here that night ready to start at the same time. So somewhere between 7:10 and 7:15, we will start, and then we'll take our break about 8:15, earlier than usual. Okay. And then we will go after a 20-minute break to, yes, note taking. And there's going to be a slightly longer second half. I normally only go about 50 minutes the second half. You notice that? We'll probably go more like about an hour and 10 minutes because there's some really important ones on that list. And I will tell you which ones, again, like I just did, that might be a high possibility of being on the final. Because after the break, those slides are the ones that could be on the final. Everything you already will have studied up through the midterm is done. You don't have to worry. It's not a cumulative test. The final is only for the second half. Okay. All right. Okay, how do you turn in the test? Thank you. I wasn't going to forget that, but I was taking some time to get to it. So thank you for bringing that up. You will have two options. You can either scan, and my daughter mentioned this. Now, I actually would like to see a chat response to this. If I don't think she would be wrong about this, because she's taken several tests already in her high school senior classes. She has 6 classes, a full load. She's trying to get into college, so she's trying to do well. She said there's something called a CAM scanner. So if you take if you have a scanner on your computer or printer, I guess it'd be your printer, right? That should be straightforward, but not everybody does, right? Or a good one. So she said you can download it from the App Store on any smartphone, or at least the most recent smartphones. I don't own a smartphone, but I'm almost certain most of you do. But there are 2 ways to do this. You can either scan with this app called CAM, right? Actually, I'll show you the note for what it's worth. Where did that go? Whoa, there we go. It's my daughter's writing. Okay, and then you save that as a PDF. In other words, you print, once again, I know it's 3 steps, but there's really the only way to do this so that they can be equally accessed, first by you to answer the questions, and then by me and the readers to grade them for your benefit, of course, to get the grades back to you. So first, you should print out the test and have it in front of you. But if you want to try and do it on a PDF, I don't know why, but some files, PDF files, will allow you to edit right there. But I think that's iffy, because it's probably better to make a Word doc. And I don't know if you can do that. That's why I give you the second option of hand printing your answers and then scanning those and sending them back to me. The point is, all of them have to be resubmitted back to be graded as PDFs. I've said that it's a given, but I will keep repeating that with, for instance, a couple of emails between now and the test, and on the night of the test. I'll remind you, please don't submit them as any other form to me for me to grade, other than a PDF, because then those can be easily accessed by me or the readers. But for you to write, I think it is probably for most of you easier to make a Word doc if you have that option. But if you have a Mac, I do understand that much about technology's limitations. Then you might not be able to create a Word doc. There's also Google Docs. I don't even know what those look like. I know they exist, and I'm sure I've probably come across them in my years of teaching, but every test before this was physical, hard copy. So this is my first time of doing this, but I know it'll work because all 3 of my readers told me that if you choose to do a hand printed answer while the test is going, or then to go back and finish them, then you can do that right on the printout that I've sent you the day before the test, and just answer them that way in real time during the test, and then go back and if you need to change your answers or something. And then scan them. You would need to scan them if you do it that way. I mean, unless you want to mail me a hard copy, I guess you could do that. You know what? I'll give you that. It's a third option, but that's cumbersome, and you have to get a stamp, and you have to make sure you go to a mailbox that what's his name? The Postmaster General hasn't removed. Well, obviously that's. I'm being silly. I'm just saying it's probably too cumbersome to physically mail them to me, but I would accept them that way if you prefer, and you're as low tech as I used to be and somewhat am still. So I'll allow you that. You could mail them to me. I'll put my mailing address in the email I send you. okay, about before the actual document gets to you. Well, probably at the same time, you'll see that. That's a third option, but the easiest ones are either scan them, and I hope everyone saw that. Does anybody need me to hold that up again? This thing about cam scanner that is available. I think it's free, or else my daughter wouldn't have told me, I think, about it on an app, the App Store with any smartphone. And then you do need to convert that scan into a PDF. I know you can do that because I've actually done that myself. Or you can just create a Word document from using as a template or format the printout, create your own Word document, because then it'll be easier for me to read your answers because you will type them right onto a new Word doc, and that's an easy thing to convert to PDF. So I know that's a little complex, but if I understand, and I do, the concepts of each step, I'm sure you guys all can not only understand them, but do whichever of those methods of getting it to me. But don't forget, you do need to submit, everyone does, all the exams for grading as a PDF to my markw@AOL. I'll remind you. Oh, here we go from Ronnie. You can also use H2. I don't know if everyone can see this. Smart app. It has a camera scan function. Oh, that's good to know. I would never have known that. Oh, and Jessica's pointing out, if the library lets you, they sometimes will let you scan documents. Yeah, I don't know. Has well, someone can send me a chat. Has anybody been inside the library this semester? I understand occasionally they allow you to check something out, but I thought they were doing that kind of at the door thing, or not curbside exactly, because there's no curb right in front of the library. Well, I guess there was one in the back, yeah, behind the main library on the main campus. The other library, yeah, there is a parking lot right behind the Petaluma campus library. Can anybody tell me if they allow people to go inside the library, for instance, to either make a printout for your papers, either your first or second paper. If you've already done the first one, you've already done that if it's possible. But I haven't seen any emails from the librarian about whether you can go inside the building to use any of their functions. Nobody knows. Okay. From Leah, we have, when will the test PDF be sent? It'll be sent Monday. I had said that briefly earlier, but I'm happy to restate that. I will more than once. It'll be in your email inbox 24 hours or more before the test, probably by 6 p.m. on next Monday, giving you a whole 24 hours to look at it, and maybe you could start answering the true false. Why not? Or just do them. It won't take you too long. But during the test, I'm going to have that section of the test up for 10 minutes, just to give people a chance who are just then doing the test and didn't see or have the time to start answering those questions. But of course, the others will be slides, just like we've been doing, which will be something you can be looking at while you answer the essay. Well, the first half, the identification section, and then, of course, the essay part. And you'll have 15 minutes for the essay questions and 2 minutes each for the slide identifications and the true false. So it's a 1 hour, it literally pans out to be 1 hour of real time on next Tuesday. Oh yeah, you should title the email. You guys are really focused, and I'm so glad. I actually was planning to do this, but I might have not thought of it. The same way I had accidentally told everybody to title the papers when I said midterm, and I meant to say a short paper number 1. And that is, and I will send you an email with it. And it's actually on the exam at the top. Well, I think I took that and put it somewhere else. Yeah, I probably did. But I do have the template. It's on the exam, but I want you to see it since you've asked that question. Very appropriate question, of course. So yeah, we'll just do it this way. Just remember, it's not a short paper. So here we go. A substitute for short paper. Sorry, I can't see where the midterm. Our 2.1 midterm, not short paper. That should be clear. Then under slash last name, period, first name. Again, our 2.1 midterm, and I'll hold this up. I'll make another one. I guess it's temporarily misplaced, but I know I have it probably in my studio. And the day of the exam, I will hold this up. And I'll also remind you that it's right at the top of your exam sheets, the instructions on how to submit it. Okay, so again, it's our 2.1 midterm, because this is for the paper, / last name, period, first name, just like that. Pretty much the same thing you do with your papers, except you don't label it short paper. Okay, let's see now if there are other questions. Let's see if any PDF be sent to the library. Does anybody know, one more time, if the library allows you to go in to do scanning or printing out of a color image for your papers? I don't know. That is it was one of their main functions for students, of course. Nobody knows. Yeah, I thought someone could send me a chat. I guess it's just, I will actually try to get in touch with them to find out, for your sake and mine. Just, I can tell all my students in both this class and the Wednesday class then, maybe by email, but if not on the night of the exam before the first slide, if I can find out. If they'll get back to me, I hope they will, with some kind of an email saying, oh, here's what students are allowed to do with access to the building or not, whether you can go inside. And if so, do you need to have an appointment and have your temperature taken? I don't know. It's hard to say, but I'll try to find that out for everyone. Okay. All right. I think we are now at 9:30, which is close to when we usually end. But because of this circumstance where we have only at this point in time for tonight, hopefully not again after this, the access for you to ask questions through the chat window, it's still open. Anybody else have a question you want to ask me on the chat function about anything about the test? Anyway, I don't grade on a curve, but being as it is open book and you have 48 hours from the time the test is given to you have to turn it in, I think that's pretty reasonable. I always graded on a straight percentage, so 90% and above is an A, and so forth. And you don't forget you have so many options for extra credit that most of you haven't even had time to think about. But once you get past the midterm, you should be able to calculate where you stand. And I can tell you anytime you can email me. Of course, don't do it this way with the chat or verbally. It's your private business what grade you're getting or total points you have. At any point, I'll email you back within 24 hours with how many points you have and how many more you need after that to get an A. But extra credit, 50 points right there, you raise your grade a whole letter grade if in case you don't do well on either one of the papers or somehow on the midterm doesn't get as high a score as you were hoping. You can still make that up as long as you do reasonably well. Hopefully, at least get a passing grade on the midterm. And I think all of you will. Well, okay. No more questions for now, right? You can email me at any point between now, but I expect to see you all between 7 and at the latest 7. Try to get logged in by 10 after at the latest so we can start the first slide on Tuesday. And you will see the document sent to you by 6 p.m. Well, certainly before 7, but let's say 6. I can do it before 6 p.m. on Monday, which will be the 2-page PDF of the midterm, which you'll want to print out. Okay? All right. I wish I could hear you all. I appreciate that when you all say good night, because then I know some people are still focused on this. So I appreciate your patience about this evening. Let's just say if it's physically possible, I will fix this glitch about the non-muting. Well, thank you too for you guys with your own information to each other and your questions for me and your patience.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Good night.
I don't think you'll find the test too difficult. I think you'll find it reasonable. All right. See you all next week. Good night.